Marvin's never seen anything. We found out last week he may or may not have seen First Blood. So Dusty thought, hey, it's time. Now, here's the thing nobody ever talks about when they talk about First Blood. The movie that everybody remembers isn't really the movie that actually exists, because the sequels completely rewired the pop culture image of John Rambo. But since this is his first time watching it, it's the perfect chance to look at what the original film is actually doing. People think it's that shirtless machine gun explosion fest version of Rambo, and they also think it's a story about soldiers being hated because of the Vietnam War. But the real movie is something much darker, about a decorated Green Beret who comes home from Vietnam and is abandoned by the system that made him. So we're digging into that movie today, the one that people think they've seen versus the one that actually exists. If you like around and find out movies, Marvin, this is the one. This kind of, not started the trend. There were ones before this for sure, but this one is the one that kind of like really pushed it into the pop cultural zeitgeist. John Rambo is a drifter. He's kind of coming through this podunk town somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, and he's traveling to meet one of his former, I guess, platoon mates, and sadly he finds out that guy died of cancer. The local sheriff, played by Brian Dennehy, Sheriff Teasle, he kind of like runs him down and is like, hey man, people won't take too kindly to somebody looking like you around here. The sheriff and his goons basically harass John Rambo, chase him into the hills and the woods, and Rambo has to fight back. There's a shift in the movie at some point that we'll get to.
This is a great film. I think, I was talking about it before we started talking about how Stallone struggles sometimes. I'm just going to jump to the end where he does that dialogue with Troutman. It starts off a little shaky, but then he really dives into it, and you can feel the presence of what he's struggling with there, and it's just a great story. This is also a big reason why I'm not a big fan of just government in general, because this is a guy who thinks this is my town. I'm going to run it how I want. I don't give a shit if this guy is a decorated war hero. I am the law, and I will do as I see fit. So it's a good warning sign of how our hubris and our corruption can turn a sour eye to somebody who doesn't deserve that sort of malevolent hire. So yeah, love this movie. It's great.
I was expecting generic action, but what I got was way better. I enjoyed this a lot. I like the slow intro of the movie, and how how people look down upon drifters or homeless people. It wasn't necessarily that he was, because he didn't even know he was a soldier at first. He just thought he was literally just like a homeless person. I thought that buildup was good. It kind of felt like they were itching to get a little bit to the action, though. I feel like I wanted to see more of maybe this slow build-up piece, because it was a very short movie. It was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I could have seen a little bit more build-up to it, because to me it just kind of felt like they were like, oh man, I can't wait to get to the action part.
I think the intro to this movie is one of the most iconic intros ever in movie history.
Yeah.
Just him walking down that road to the Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack.
It was 80s, but it wasn't like rock songs. It was still more of the, I don't even know how the composition to describe it, but it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. This is an action movie. It's not an action movie, but
for sure.
This movie is based on a book that came out in 1972, which was closer to the Vietnam War than the movie. The movie was released in 1982. But back then, people didn't know what PTSD was. We didn't even call it PTSD. We called it shell shock, I think, after Vietnam. We didn't really understand the actual mental toll that took on people. This movie is one of the first times, at least that I'm aware of, that really kind of shone a light on that. And that's really what the movie's about. Now, surprisingly, people have a really weird misunderstanding of what this movie's about. People think that this movie is about the mistreatment specifically of Vietnam veterans. And I was reading Reddit threads and stuff like that, and it's a lot of people really just spreading this misinformation, oh yeah, people just didn't like Vietnam soldiers back then because they were against the war. And I don't know how you get to that conclusion, but it's
No.
like a complete misunderstanding of the movie. And it's derived, I think, from the dialogue that the sheriff says to him, something along the lines of like, that flag and that jacket, people won't like somebody like you, looking like you in this town. And people think that that's about him being a veteran, but we got to remember at this point, the sheriff doesn't know that he's a veteran. He just
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
he just sees a guy in a military jacket. Now, if you think about the time that the Vietnam War happened, that is the clothing of liberal hippies who were against the war. Okay. And he's got long hair and he's unkempt. So he's seen as A, homeless drifter, and B, probably some like hippie liberal protester. And this is a conservative town. He's like, we don't want you here.
He says it at the end of the movie, and in the monologue, he talks about getting back to the airport and people spitting and hissing and all that stuff. So they make a point to bring attention to it. But I agree with you. It's not solely about that, but his struggle to find a place it's just another enumeration of his struggle to be able to do that. Is like, well, this cop thinks I'm some hippie because how I'm dressed and everything, and I've already been spit on by people because they didn't. This was before support our troops. Now people are like, yeah, we'll support the troops, but we hate the government that sends them to kill people.
Yeah.
This was before all that. So there was a disdain for people that were actually getting drafted, no choice of their own, and going over there to fight.
We'll actually get into that a little bit more. There's some interesting history to that. Like you said, that this guy who's kind of like lost and doesn't really have a way in life. The action stuff aside, if you really want to nail that sort of message, it kind of hinges on Stallone's performance. And I thought, you mentioned his, the big dialogue at the end there, which I think he does nail. While it's a little bit like, I'm not going to say cheesy, but it is a little bit like, it's got a little 80s cheese to it.
The very beginning has a little, nothing is over.
but his performance in this movie, I think, is great.
It is.
Because he doesn't perform like an action star in this movie. He's actually very restrained, very quiet. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue in the movie up until the end, really. He's got one really badass line where he says to the Teasle, he's got the knife to his neck, and he's like, don't push it or I'll give you a war you won't believe. Let it go. That shit was bad. If somebody told me that with a knife to my neck, I'm out. Dude, like, all right, enjoy the woods. Sorry, my bad.
That big ass knife. Yeah, I'm out of there.
He continuously shows restraint every time that violence is escalated against him. He tries to de-escalate until he can't. I mean, like, he didn't do anything wrong. The guy fell out of a helicopter shooting at him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
what he said.
Like,
when he's talking to the colonel, he's like, he just kept pushing. Like, he kept pushing, and then he just go into Green Beret mode. It's like nothing else you could do at that point. It's just over.
And what's interesting,
I like that how he portrayed it. Like you said, it's not like a general action star. Like, he was pretty smart. Like, he was doing like smart shit with the guerrilla warfare throughout the movie. And that was like definitely different than like a generic like action movie for sure.
You realize during the movie, he doesn't fire a single bullet to kill anybody in this movie. He everything he does is to distract or to evade or to, like, make people like afraid to back off. He's never firing like kill shots in this movie, which is interesting to look back on it now, because again, the franchise just becomes something completely, entirely different. There is some 80s cheese to this movie. There's no doubt about it. You mentioned the guy falling out of the helicopter. That one is the scream that guy lets out. Is like, is so funny. But what one scene really made me laugh. He's in a junkyard at one point or something, and like, just there's graffiti in the background, and somebody just spray painted just the word Satan, like, because like back in the 80s, that's like, oh my god,
that was the trigger word.
That's crazy. Like, imagine the absolute badass that tagged that up, just Satan.
Randomly.
Yeah, very funny to me. Going back to what we were talking about, Dusty, like, you and I both echoed the same sentiments, that this is a story about a system that failed soldiers, not really how society failed soldiers, which is the story that was told. And this was super interesting, and I never realized this. Everybody has kind of heard, well, maybe not everybody, but the story of like soldiers being spat on when they came home from the war. I did a little investigating into that, and turns out it's actually a complete myth. There's no historical context or evidence that has been researched like very deeply, by historians and reporters and stuff. There is actually like no recorded evidence of this happening. Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm sure there was some disrespect that
from some protesters, most likely, but not
yeah,
the general
people who were against
imagine.
the war were also against the warriors back then.
They were called baby killers and stuff like that. Correct. But this specific myth of the being spit on, it seems more likely that it was actually a propaganda campaign to spin the narrative that people were against not the war itself, but the actual soldiers fighting the war. Like that was our government spreading propaganda to be like, look, these hippie liberals hate the soldiers. They don't respect our soldiers. But really what the majority of people's issue was that we were fighting an illegal war.
When haven't veterans been mistreated in American history, though? That's like...
But that's the thing, right? They're mistreated 100%, but by our own government.
It's yeah, for sure. I mean, it could be both technically, right? Like, it's up to the government to like put systems in place that like rehabilitate them and stuff. But it is up to society and people too to also like your fellow man,
absolutely,
to help them back up. Yeah,
totally. Like we have a like now in real life, we have a big homelessness issue. A lot of homeless people are veterans. Like people come home from war, they're not given the tools to adequately like reestablish themselves back into society. And if you've seen action like John Rambo has, it's not easy to do that. You need like therapy and like counseling and stuff to deal with these severe traumatic things you've experienced and get yourself back into society.
Some people may not agree, but like similar, there's parallels with that with people coming back from prison. Like there's 100%. No systems.
Absolutely.
And even on a different thing, like people that deal with like gang wars and shit in their own neighborhoods where like, oh, I lost 10 friends this year. Like there's not a lot of systems in place to rehabilitate people with PTSD, like period. Like
absolutely.
Yeah, we still don't fully understand how to reacclimate people into a quote unquote peaceful, civilized society when they've gone through such severe traumatic violence.
We hear today a lot of like conservative rhetoric specifically, which is like support the troops, support the troops, support the troops. Well, we don't support the troops at all because they come home from your wars, not conservative wars, just our government wars, and they're just not given adequate anything. And it's a tragedy. And that's really what this movie is sort of shining a light on. When the sheriff does find out that he is a decorated veteran, what is he? He has the medal. Is it the Medal of Honor? I don't remember.
Congressional Medal of Honor, yes.
Which is the highest honor a soldier could get. And once the sheriff finds that out, he's like, whatever, I'm unfazed by that. Which again deepens it shows the disrespect. That's where the disrespect comes in. It's like, I'm unmoved, I'm unwavered by this information.
Brian Dennehy, I think, killed it in this. You say it earlier that this is about like a system failing, and it is somewhat, but this is also about somebody digging their heels in, like somebody within the system not wanting to be wrong, not believing, just believing in his heart that he's right and it doesn't matter because he's the law.
Yep.
Like the ignorance of that like is expounded. So
totally.
You kind of see that oh shit on his face, but also you kind of see that I don't care because this motherfucker's gonna die. And he questions the general Troutman or whatever. He's like, would you kill him? He's like, I don't know.
And the only one who really was like somewhat like a decent person was David Caruso's character Mitch, who was like he was like the young kid who was like, yo, what are we doing, bro? He's a veteran. Like, why are we doing this?
He's a fucking Green Beret. Those guys are badasses.
This guy's gonna fuck us up. Like, what are we doing here? You always got to have that.
And they got off easy is the crazy part, and they just kept doubling down, tripling down.
And even in the end, like that's what's cool about the ending is like why I pointed out he doesn't kill anybody really.
He just crippled a couple people.
Yeah, no big deal.
Just shot some legs and had the one guy hemmed up like a Christmas tree. And
the spike trap.
Nah, the guy that was like tied to the tree or some shit.
By his
it was
neck.
like screaming, help, help.
He was like
funny.
Fucking like on the front of a ship.
Like, what have I got myself into? Can you just imagine these poor lieutenants in this small hick town? Like, bro, that shit had to be.
They have that character in the movie. It's the dude who was leading the local fucking
National
offshoot,
Guard.
National Guard. He's like, I gotta go back to work tomorrow. Like, I don't want to be out here.
Yeah.
What the fuck he's saying? I gotta sell cars.
That shit was
the guy.
insane. Yeah.
So this Wikipedia article, it explains it. So it says that there is this misconception or myth that many Vietnam War veterans were spat on and vilified by anti-war protesters during the late 60s and 70s. These stories, which overwhelmingly surfaced many years after the war, usually involve an anti-war female spitting on a veteran, often yelling "baby killer." No unambiguous documented incident of this behavior has ever surfaced, despite repeated and concerted efforts to uncover them. The few dubious examples brought forward have been the object of much debate and controversy. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke to this in his April 1967 speech, Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence, when he chastised, quote, those who are seeking to make it appear that anyone who opposes the war in Vietnam is a fool or a traitor or an enemy of our soldiers. So this is something that is still persistent today. It's a narrative that is not gone away all these years later. That's the whole core of the movie. A portrait of a guy who literally has lost everything. He's lost the society that he fought for. He has nothing. He has no job. He can't hold the job. All the stuff that he echoes in that final sort of monologue there. And it's just interesting the departure that the franchise took from that, and how like that emotional core is just directly contradicted by the franchise that really is what most people remember about this character.
We don't care about your trauma. We hear you're good at killing. Do you want to go do some of that now?
You want to go do more killing? Because we're in the era
Less talking.
We're in the era of blockbusters.
More M60s, please.
Yeah. Maybe it's partially because the truth that this movie presented is uncomfortable. So people would prefer the popcorn, M60 shooting,
100%.
compound bow action movie that you don't have to think about. Whereas
Just mindless, yeah.
Yeah, America might prefer the fantasy of the invincible warrior, which is probably likely the case. I mean, that's why
Commando.
Yeah. Like that is like nothing is more American than that. And those movies were very pervasive over the years.
Yeah.
But watching it now, I think makes it more relevant than it might have even been back then, just because these issues still exist today.
Just glad that it wasn't as I remembered it, just like just a generic action movie. I'm glad it was more than that, much more than that.
To circle back to the final monologue, I think when he's mad at the very beginning and he's yelling, that's where to me it feels a little bit cheesy. But when he gets there and he starts breaking down and he's crying and he's like talking about his buddy that's all over him that he can't get off and everything else, I guess he nails that scene when he's he's reaching out to the colonel's hand. He needs somebody to let him know that's okay. Like he's broken down and raw. It's really good.
Yeah. I don't think the anger part was cheesy actually to me. I feel like it's like the necessary to do the breakdown scene. Like you can't just, because he didn't show any type of emotion before, right? So I feel like it would have been even more jarring, maybe it wouldn't have hit as hard without the anger. I feel like you got to have the anger to do the breakdown, to cry.
This movie has stood the test of time. Still widely praised. It has a 7.7 on IMDb. Where are we at?
I think it's an 8. Like I said, it's not a perfect movie for me, but it's pretty good. My only complaints are, like I said, it felt like they were kind of a little bit itching to get to the action piece of it. But yeah, it was good.
I give it an 8 too. I love the pacing of this film. I think it does very well. It's well acted. Again, Sly and Dennehy nailed this movie. I don't think it would have been the same without either one of them.
True.
So yeah, just great all around movie.
I agree. I'm there with you guys on the 8. It's an 8 for sure. Yeah, I mean, it has its cheesy moments, like popping a wheelie in the middle of a car chase.
Oh my god, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
You always got to do the wheelie. Little things here and there, but overall, nothing that ruins the movie or the experience, because it does the thing it wanted to do, and it also shows like this is proof for, like, again, we criticize all these movies that come out nowadays. It's like you could still have a movie be an action movie and be entertaining and do all the things, but also have like a poignant message that it nails home.
True,
it doesn't have to be only one or the other, right? We need to look to the past.
Thoughtful action.
We need to look to the past to proceed into the future for everything, really. But yeah, great movie. Glad Dusty picked it. I'm glad you liked it. And yeah, for anybody out there who thinks Rambo is bullet chain belts across his chest and crossbows and all sorts of shit. Go back and have a watch for First Blood, and get the real story of John Rambo.